Hey yo, what's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over Roaring Moon from Temporal Forces. This is a set that is going to be coming out in March that has a lot of really cool new cards, and today I'm going to be going over a deck list that I've been working on for this deck. I think this deck is going to be very powerful, one of the better cards that has been leaked from the Japanese translations that have been coming out over the past couple of weeks. So today we're going to be going over the deck list, kind of how it works, and you know, my overall thoughts on it. So with that being said, if you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's hop right into it. Alrighty, hopping into it here, we have Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is a 140 HP basic ancient Pokemon with the attack Vengeful Feathers. Vengeful Feathers is a really powerful attack. The attack does 70 damage plus 10 more for each ancient card in your discard pile. The goal of this deck is to get tons of ancient cards into the discard pile and then use that Vengeful Feathers to be able to deal pretty much unlimited damage. Speedwing is the other attack on this card, which for 4 energy only deals 120 damage, which honestly is not very powerful. Our deck is going to be mainly reliant on that Vengeful Feathers to be able to take those big KOs. This attack is somewhat similar to cards in the past that were quite well known and successful, being Vespiquen, which Vespiquen's Be Revenge attack did 20 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile, and then the Night March engine, which did 20 times 20 for each Pokemon in the discard pile with the Night March attack. It's really nice that Vengeful Feathers deals 70 plus and not some of these older cards that only deal 20 plus. It's nice to see that they've actually, you know, kind of gone up with the inflation of Pokemon's HP, meaning that this card is going to be able to take knockouts, because if this thing was 20 plus, it would be much harder to be able to take big knockouts. So it's nice to see that they've actually, you know, kind of increased that base damage on a card like this to keep up with the inflation of Pokemon HP, because back in the day when cards like Vespiquen and also the Night March deck were popular, the highest HP Pokemon were sitting around 180 to 200-ish, whereas now the highest HP Pokemon are going over 300 HP. Roaring Moon is going to be powered up with some pretty powerful cards that we're going to go into shortly, and the 2 dark energy cost is going to be really easy to power up. All right, let's hop into the rest of the deck. All right, here are some of the brand new cards as well from Temporal Forces that I think also have quite a lot of potential in this deck. We have Great Tusk with 140 HP, is an ancient Pokemon with that Ground Collapse attack, which reads, discard the top card of your opponent's deck, and if you played an ancient supporter card from your hand during this turn, you get to discard 3 more cards. This is actually relatively powerful because our main draw support cards in this deck are ancient cards, which means that you are oftentimes going to be given the opportunity to be able to Ground Collapse and discard the top 4 cards off your opponent's deck. This has some potential because there are going to be some points in the game where your Roaring Moon is not able to take a knockout, and you're kind of in this weird spot where do you just poke them for a little bit of damage even though you could just knock them out the next turn, or you have the option to use something like that Great Tusk to be able to mill the top 4. This can also catch people off guard towards the end of the game. You can definitely surprise someone if they go down to 4 cards or less and Ground Collapse and deck them out. Pretty decent card. We don't play necessarily a lot of them in the deck because its retreat cost is very large, which means that this is not a Pokemon that you necessarily want to start. It's more of a niche card, doesn't come up in every single game, but you can definitely surprise some people, and when you do, it's really powerful. Fluttermane is going to be one of the main cards in this deck with that Witching Hour Flutter. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon has no abilities except for Witching Hour Flutter. This card is really good against Lost Zone engine decks. Comfy relies on using that flower selecting to be able to allow those Lost Zone engine decks to be able to set up. So if you start this Fluttermane, we do play 4 in the list, you're going to be oftentimes shutting them down from setting up, giving you time to set up your Roaring Moons and get ready to be able to run them over. If they aren't able to use flower selecting, then they really aren't going to be able to function, and it just gives you so much time, which is another reason as to why I have 4 of these in the deck. Especially with things like Escape Rope leaving the format, it's not like they can just Escape Rope out of the Fluttermane, so it causes a lot of problems for them. Another big thing about this card is that it has a 1 retreat cost. This actually does matter. Having a 1 retreat cost is really nice, and there's actually the biggest problem with cards like Great Tusk and Brute Bonnet is that they have very hefty retreat costs, meaning that you have to find one of your few switch cards to easily move those things out of the active. So starting with Fluttermane is totally fine because you can retreat it relatively easily with an energy, and you have other things like Professor Sada's Vitality and Dark Patch to be able to power up your Roaring Moons. You can manually attach to Fluttermane and be totally fine. So anyways, these cards have a lot of potential, and they definitely come up in pretty cool situations. You can definitely catch people off guard with that Great Tusk, and you can shut people down before they set up with the Flutter Mane. They both have a lot of potential on the deck, and I think that they're really important to include. Next up here, we have Drums of Awakening. 2024 is the return of A-Specs. There have been plenty of A-Specs cards that have been released, and I think this one works really nicely in the deck. It is an item card, which is really nice, meaning that you can use a supporter along with this card on the same turn. Really nice because this card is really good. You get to draw a card for each of your ancient Pokemon in play, which if you're playing a ancient deck, this card is amazing because typically you're going to get lots of ancient Pokemon onto the field really quickly, which means that this card oftentimes just reads draw 4 or draw 5 cards right off the bat, which I think is really powerful. Now, it's really good in ancient decks. You know, it's not going to be a card that is necessarily played in non-ancient decks because the card is pretty much useless, but I think it makes a really powerful card in this deck. Just being able to draw more cards can never hurt. It also goes in the discard pile as well, so you just use it to draw a couple cards. It adds also 10 more damage to your attack. Makes a lot of sense. I'm really excited for A-Spec cards coming out. I know that a lot of people have mostly been talking about Prime Catcher, but I'm happy to see that we're getting some other, cards that specifically work, for ancient and future cards. I know that there is a new future A-Spec card as well that's coming out that I think a lot of future decks are going to play over Prime Catcher, and I think that for these ancient decks, Drums of Awakening, gives you a reason to play it over, Prime Catcher. I'm happy that they're making other A-Spec cards that really work nicely with, specific variants, so not everyone's just, playing Prime Catcher. But yeah, Drums of Awakening, I think is a really good card in this deck and makes it a lot more consistent and allows you to burn through your deck even quicker. Next up here, we have Explorer's Guidance and Professor Sada's Vitality. Explorer's Guidance is a brand new card that is going to be coming out in the Temporal Forces set and is exactly like Hapu, which was a card that we had several years ago in the standard format. It reads, look at the top 6 cards of your deck and you put 2 of them into your hand and you discard the other cards. So this is a great way to be able to get an ancient card in the discard pile as your supporter for turn. And also when you look at those 6 cards, you're oftentimes are going to draw into ancient, cards that you don't necessarily need in a specific matchup, and you get to toss those away, powering up your Roaring Moon's attack. We also have Professor Sada's Vitality as well, and this is a great card early game to be able to get energies onto your Roaring Moons. Choose up to 2 of your ancient Pokemon and attach a basic energy card you find there from your discard pile to each of them, and if you attach any energy in this way, you draw 3 cards. You can also pair up nicely with Explorer's Guidance. If you get some dark energies in the discard pile off that, then the very next turn you can use Professor Sada's Vitality and get those energies back onto the field. These are going to be our main 2 draw supporters. We also have Boss's Orders in this deck, and I think that's pretty much all you need. Just a few Explorer's Guidance, a few Professor Sada's Vitality, and then 2 Boss's Orders, I think is the perfect supporter count as of right now. All right, here is the Roaring Moon list that I have built. Let me know what you think of it in the comments as well. Any cards that, I should be considering, also in this deck, feel free to put those in the comments. But we got 4 Roaring Moon here, main attacker. You need to play 4 of them so we consistently get them. Also, you can discard them as well to increase your Roaring Moon's attack. So just playing as many ancient Pokemon as you reasonably can makes a lot of sense. We got 4 Flutter Mane as well. Flutter Mane obviously has that great ability, really good against those Lost Box decks, good starter as well. Also because it has a 1 retreat cost, the reason as to why we only have 2 Brute Bonnet and 1 Great Tusk is because the retreat costs are relatively hefty, so it is nice having a ancient Pokemon with only 1 retreat cost. So if you do start it other than the Roaring Moon, it's a significantly better starter than something like that Brute Bonnet or Great Tusk. We got Brute Bonnet as well, pairs up very nicely with Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, is also another ancient Pokemon that you can discard away. You don't necessarily have a whole lot of HP with that Roaring Moon as well, which means that if you're poisoning yourself, you're probably getting 1 shot anyways. So, you poisoning yourself is really not that big of a deal. 2 Roaring Moon EX as well. This is going to be the 1-2 prize Pokemon that we play in this deck. Being able to use Frenzied Gouging can definitely catch people off guard. It's a good card to use in the early game as well when your Roaring Moons attack. The 1 prizer is not up to that 1-shot level versus some of these high HP decks yet. You can kind of go to the Roaring Moon EX and use that Frenzied Gouging, and then later on in the game when you're able to 1-shot with the Roaring Moon single prize one, that is going to typically be the route that you oftentimes want to take versus some of those higher HP decks. So it just makes a lot of sense to have this card in the deck. We got also the option to Calamity Storm, really good attack, being able to deal 220 is quite strong, paired up also with the poison from the Brute Bonnet, able to deal 230, which is really good against some specific things. Knocks out things like Iron Hands and also opposing Roaring Moons as well, which is pretty good. We got 1 Great Tusk as well, with that first attack being able to mill cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Can definitely catch people off guard and deck people out if they're not careful and don't respect the card, which is pretty cool. Also can just, if there's a situation where your Roaring Moon attack doesn't really do a whole lot and you can't pull off an EX, you could just decide to mill a couple cards and potentially get rid of some important resources. Definitely could come up in some situations. The retreat cost is quite big, which is why there's only one of them in the deck. You don't necessarily want to play higher counts of this card, as if you start this, you have to rely on switch card as opposed to just manually retreating it, which is something that you can easily do with something like the Flutter Mane or the Radiant Greninja as well. Radiant Greninja with that concealed cards, great for consistency, being able to discard a Dark Energy, get it into the discard pile, synergizes fantastically with things like Professor Sada's Vitality and Dark Patch as well, which is really, really nice. Being able to draw cards, great consistency card. 4 Professor Sada's Vitality, 4 Explorer's Guidance, and 2 Boss's Orders rounds out the supporters. Heading on into the items here, we got 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Dark Patch, 4 Earthen Vessel as well. Earthen Vessel going to allow us to get those Dark Energies in the discard pile and just ancient cards in general as well. Helps with the consistency, being able to make sure that you hit those attacks as consistently as possible. 3 Trek and Choose as well for consistency, 2 Nest Ball, 2 Switch Card, and 2 Super Rod as well. You want to play Super Rod even though that gets ancient cards back into the deck. We play Pokestop. So the problem with Pokestop is that you can oftentimes inadvertently, discard your Roaring Moons, which you want to use as your attackers. So just having Super Rod to be able to get those back just makes a lot of sense, kind of allowing you to be able to, hit consistent Roaring Moon attacks. 1 Drum of Awakening, that is going to be the A-spec of choice. It is an ancient card, which means when it goes in the discard pile, you do 10 more damage, which is great. And you also get to draw cards, which is really, really nice consistency card. 4 Ancient Booster Energy Capsule pairs up great with Brute Bonnet as well, is an ancient card that we can easily toss away also. 4 Pokestop for consistency, and then 6 Dark Energy to round out the list. I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think that this deck has the ability to be a top tier deck if we're able to get it consistent enough and working versus all those specific matchups that it needs to work against. Some decks you're going to need to be focusing a little bit more on that one prize Roaring Moon, and then in some matchups you can potentially prize race them with a Roaring Moon EX. So you do have a lot of options with this deck, which is why I think it has a lot of potential as of right now, and I like this build currently for it. Once again, let me know if you think that there are any potential changes and stuff like that that you think I should make. Make sure to put that in the comments. I'd love to hear from you all. And thank you so much for all the support as always. I'm going to be trying to get more Temporal Forces content out as, some of these, new cards and stuff like that get leaked on social media and stuff like that. And we get more translations. We've already got a ton of them, so I think this is a good starting point if you're considering building some of these proxy decks and stuff like that at home. But anyways, thanks so much for all the support as always. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It's the best way to support me as a creator. If you're looking for pre-orders for things like Paldean Fates and also Temporal Forces, you can go check out GameGridSOC.com. You can use my code SmartTCG for 5% off your next order. The link will be the very first thing in the description. Anyways, thanks so much as always. I appreciate it, and I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out.